X99 is the chipset you normally expect on motherboards using the LGA2011 V3 socket. X99 is like a medal worn with pride by motherboards like the Huananzhi X99 QD4. But unlike the boards of the past, these new LGA2011 V3 boards are guilty of stolen valor, as seen from the CPU-Z window on screen right now. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the Huananzhi X99 QD4, and as usual, we start off with the VRM. We are dealing with 6 phases in total for the CPU, with one high side and one low side MOSFET, placed on a fairly decent heatsink. Good enough for the cheap 120-ish watts Xeons typically paired with this board. The board has 4 memory slots, and thankfully with latches at both ends. The QD4 designation is a hint that these are for the rather slow 2133 MHz DDR4 sticks. But here's the kicker for this LGA2011 V3 boards, or at least for this one. You see, the old Xeons used with them had not 2 but 4 memory channels. The Huananzhi board wired its 4 slots so that all 4 channels are in use, for an equivalent bandwidth of a 4266 MHz dual channel configuration. On the expansion slot side of things, we have 3 PCIe slots with a 1-lane slot placed above the 16-lane one and a 4-lane slot placed well below the 16-lane one. This way, most GPUs will not turn it into a decoration. The board also has 2 Endo2 slots. And guess what? They are both PCIe only. No SATA support for these. This might seem weird until you consider that. The chipset is not X99 but rather Q87, and as you'll see shortly, it has no SATA channels to spare for the Endo2 slots. The CPU that are typically placed here have a lot more PCIe lanes than what's available on the consumer-grade CPUs of their generation. The board also comes with 6 SATA connectors. They are all of the straight variety, but before you start booing, keep in mind that they are placed far enough from the PCIe X16 slot to avoid interfering with the GPU used in it. In terms of pin headers, most of them are placed on the bottom edge of the board in your typical manner. First is the front audio connector, followed by a debug header and a serial COM. But since most peripherals move to USB, the following USB 2 and USB 3 connectors make more sense. Interestingly enough, the USB 3 connector is sandwiched between 2 USB 2 headers. You then get the clear CMOS header, where shorting the rightmost 2 pins will clear up the settings, which is then followed by a single system fan header in an unusual 3-pin configuration. As for the front panel connector, well, it is turned upside down. The rear I/O is both bland and unusual. The unusual part comes in the form of the missing video outputs. But this makes sense if you consider that the E5 Xeons that would be used here don't have an iGPU to begin with. Otherwise, you get a pair of PS2 connectors for mouse and keyboard, 6 USB Type-A out of which only 2 are USB 3, the gigabit LAN and the simplest 3-jack audio. This is for the Huananzhi X99 QD4. Rear audio, volume 100%, preamp 0. The audio input is fine in terms of levels, but I've heard better from other boards. When it comes to the BIOS, we don't have an easy mode here, it's all text-based, but it does provide access to the most settings of interest, like the core clock. Core voltage can also be configured for applying a voltage offset. Undervolting is therefore on the table to allow reducing the power dissipated by the CPU. And speaking of power, you should consider changing the power limits configured by default. I found that nominal limits the power delivered to the core to just 75 watts, while level 2 will allow it to go above 100 watts. The above 4G decoding is pretty much the closest thing to rebar that it is available on this board. The compatibility support module, however, needs to be disabled, and video mode set to UEFI before this becomes available. The board, at least this 2023 variant, is a decent way of getting some experience with the Haswell E5 Xeon CPUs. That doesn't mean it's the best LGA2011 V3 board. The VRM will do the job for 120 watts rated TDP Xeons, but higher clocked ones could cause issues. And while it does wire all 4 memory channels of the processor, it only offers 1 DIMM slot per channel. Sure, using registered DIMMs will allow you to reach higher RAM capacities than compared using your typical unbuffered sticks. Still, the Xeons can address more. Maybe a reason for this limitation are the 2 rather feeble buck converters used to generate the voltage for the memory rail. Then again, this is the choice that Huananzhi made when designing the board. Usually, the E5 Xeons were recommended as a cheap way to get a decent gaming setup going. But the board goes for 100 to 150 USD on sites like eBay, AliExpress or Frugo. Not that cheap really, and makes the LGA2011 V3 socket less appealing. For comparison, B550 boards go for similar prices, and they offer not only access to X3D Ryzen CPUs, but also PCIe Gen 4, TPM, and an overall more modern platform. This is the reason why I can't really recommend opting for this platform when it comes to building yourself a gaming PC. And even if you manage to get a board for cheap, the single-core performance of these Xeons make them using in a gaming PC somewhat questionable. But that's a whole video of its own. As for this one, well, we're done. Thanks for watching, I hope you liked it, and I'll see you for the